Hello. Today I'm reviewing Horus Rising by Dan Abnett. So this is the first book of the Horus Heresy series, which is a huge series by Black Library, which is a subsidiary company of Games Workshop, I guess. They basically released all the books for Warhammer. If you're watching this, you probably already know that. But yeah, so this is the first book, so I think a lot of people are going to have to pick this up if they want to read the whole series, as it introduces some important characters. Probably isn't obligatory, but I'd recommend reading it, and as you'll find out, I think it's quite a good book anyway. And it's kind of, well, I wouldn't say unique, but it's different to your standard action themed book, as I think a lot of average action themed books will sort of have decent action, but the characters are kind of bland, they're not that interesting, a bit one-dimensional, but the action kind of keeps you reading them, even though it's kind of average. But yeah, I'm glad they picked Dan Abnett, because he seemed to write it in the opposite manner. It has superb characters, and they play off against each other really well. So I like to say they bounce off each other because of the interactions with each other that they have. But it's not that the action's bad, there just isn't that much of it. But I think that's to be expected, because this is sort of setting the scene in a way. Because it's such a long and complex tale. It took about 3 books in the series, I think, to really set the scene for this series. And yeah, I'm glad they picked Dan Abnett, because he's experienced. He's written a lot of books for Warhammer. I used to read Gaunt's Ghosts when I was a lot younger. I remember those coming out. That was quite a while ago, I think. I wonder what the actual year was, but so yeah, the characters are very interesting, and I think, as you'll see with Aaron Dembski Foden's book reviews I've done, that's crucially important, because when you're reading a book, you need the characters to be interesting. You can't really empathise with a Space Marine. It kind of just leaves the action. That's the only motive for you to keep on reading, to see Space Marines kicking the shit out of guardsmen and aliens and stuff. Traitor guard, I should say. But yeah, the main character is loooong, and he is sort of set in situations where it's not obvious what course of action he should take. You sort of experience his moral dilemmas, I suppose, which is always an interesting thing to read about, because you kind of wonder, what would you do in that situation, and what would loooong, given what you already know about him, how would he act? Yeah, and I've heard Dan Abnett actually call this sort of moral dilemma, he's stated the importance of it, of putting in moral dilemmas for the characters to experience. For example, there's a great argument later on when all the captains, who have been quite fledged out by this stage, they've been quite well developed in terms of their personality, they have an argument with Horus, which is it's not really something you expect, but it seemed fitting, and it kind of worked, and it was interesting. That really stuck in my mind for quite a while after reading it. So yeah, I think the great strength is the characters. Sure, there is imagery. I don't think it's outstanding or anything, but really it's the characters that I focused on when I read this, and I was thinking about a review. I thought, okay, the characters were just gripping. But it's not really to the detriment of everything else. He still sort of maintains decent standards for imagery, the action, and the setting. Settings are kind of interesting because Horus is at the helm for the Sons of Horus, formerly the Lunar Wolves. So I guess my criticisms would be perhaps a bit more action would be nice, but it's quite. I'm sort of clutching at straws as I often do because this book isn't intended to be an action fest. It's intended to set the scene for the other books in Horus Heresy. Something I did notice, there is a lot of dialogue, but I guess that's because of the character development that was sort of unavoidable. Yeah, and because there's a lot of speech, I guess the readability is pretty good. Most people will be able to read this, even younger people. On the other hand, if you're after sort of simple, non-stop action, as I guess younger readers might be, depends how bloodthirsty they are, I guess. This probably isn't the book for you because there's a lot of talking, which I thought was interesting, but I guess I'm kind of boring in a way. But no, seriously, it's the character development and talking, and it works as a book, but it might not be the most exciting for everyone. For example, if you weren't interested in Games Workshop or the Horus Heresy, you could find this book quite boring. Yeah, so the verdict is it's very good, I think. It's okay in all areas, but the characters are awesome, so I think it gets a thumbs up for that. And you probably have to read it anyway if you're going to read the rest of the Horus Heresy series. But it's not exactly a chore, considering how good it is. So that's it. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in another video.